In today's episode, we come alongside John Laine, who shares details of his mountaintop experiences in his real estate business, along with his deep struggles when his business was suffering, greatly affecting his mental health. Some of the content in here is not meant for younger listeners, so I want parents to be aware of these topics being discussed on the episode today. John is a true warrior in his battle against depression that he faced for many years. And I encourage anyone struggling in similar areas to seek out counseling and to educate yourself about your condition. For sure, do not isolate yourself. Connecting with others can help you gain self-esteem and overcome destructive self-judgment. Furthermore, scheduling regular times for healthy activities that you enjoy, such as listening to music, reading, spending time in nature like what John did, and engaging in low-stress hobbies can also be a big step in the right direction. If you need prayer or words of encouragement, I'd love to be able to help in that way. Reach out to me on my Instagram at KennyWillJohnson. And now for episode 15. Are you a hardworking dad, juggling family responsibilities while dreaming of building wealth through real estate? Welcome to the Invested Fathers Podcast, where we explore how to balance investing and fatherhood. I'm your host, Kenny Johnson, founder of East West Capital. Over the past 5 years, I've been buying real estate to free up my time and secure my family's future. Now I'm here to help you do the same. Join me as we navigate the real estate world together, building wealth and strengthening our families. As my grandma always said, East West, home's best. I'm here with my good friend, John Laine. John, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Kenny. Thank you for having me. I always appreciate it.
John has done, I forget the number, John, but 100 single-family homes.
400 in my personal portfolio.
Okay.
The ones I didn't keep.
Just deals. So that's a lot. Then went through the '08 crash, had a big apartment building in South Carolina, and went bankrupt from, they called a loan that you didn't have money for.
I did not go bankrupt. One of the really important milestones in my life, it took me almost 15 years, but I paid everybody back. I did not go bankrupt.
So that tells testimony of John and his experience. When you're doing these types of investing in the business world, real estate, you have to have a certain level of, I would say, risk tolerance, action. You're someone who can analyze and take action. You can't be analysis paralysis if you're buying 400 homes. Just a mover, connecting people, problem solving. So I'm loving the conversations around, hey, take this type of person and let's look at the other side of your life. John, let me start by just asking the simple question of, who are you? And tell us a little about your story.
Okay, so when you asked me to be on your podcast, my first pushback was, I'm happily not a father. Right? I had some trepidation about, I don't know if I'm a fit, but I do look at fatherhood differently. Kenny knows my story, so I'm going to give it a brief, but I haven't talked to my dad in 35 years, and that's my choice. That's my choice I made.
Mm-hmm.
Grew up in a really weird household. I haven't talked to my mom. I haven't talked to my dad. I had to step away from my family. Core values didn't align. Who we wanted to be as adults didn't align. I give my folks credit for mostly raising me, but I was independent by the time I was 14. I was adulting at the age of 14. I was paying my own bill. I was buying my own groceries. I was paying my own rent.
Wow.
And I was fully adulting by the time I was 16. The parents weren't very good and they weren't around either, right? So I was pretty self-dependent in a super early age. So this whole idea of fatherhood and invested, like, I do have an odd way of looking at it. I am now 56. I've been able to say, okay, there are some really great people out there who happen to be fathers, and I have really tried to align myself with those people. My father-in-law passed away COVID. He taught for 55 years. He raised my wife, who I'm crazy about. I've been able to connect with people who I definitely appreciate as a father type figure. Hayden was his name. Jim is a really good friend of mine. He's in his mid 70s as well. I look at him as what a good father looks like. I have a benchmark. Got to be happily married really long time. If I'm going to interact with you in any meaningful way, my first question is, how happily married are they?
Interesting. That's a big one.
That's like the first thing I look at.
I mean, we're talking like there's partnerships, there's who are my close friends, inner circle.
That is my very first benchmark. It goes back to, I used to sell shoes, right?
Yes. Tell us about that.
Between like ages of 20 to 28, I sat at the feet of little old ladies. And I mean, you can joke all about it, like making all the Al Bundy jokes, but Al Bundy lived in a 4-bedroom, 2-car garage on a single income in Chicago, right? I did okay as a shoe salesman, decent money. I could sit at the feet of little old ladies and I would watch them come in, husband, wife. These people they'd gone through the Depression. They'd gone through World War I. They'd gone through World War II. They'd gone through Korean War, Vietnam War. And I would see these people over a lifetime, 50, 60, 70 years of marriage. And these people are still holding hands. These people are still cute and cuddly and loving to one another. Like, that's the benchmark that I look at when I think of invested fathers, right? I got some of the best marriage advice sitting at the feet of little old ladies. I got amazing business advice. I got amazing marriage advice. It was really an act of service for me to help them. We've talked about how important service is.
Yeah.
And so that's where my idea of what fatherhood looked like, because I had so many examples of what it should be. And so when I married my wife, I knew that that was the first checkbox.
We've covered where you were at in regards to values with your wife and what you looked for. I'm very curious to know her thoughts of you, shoe salesman, rough background at home. You guys must have just really hit that off.
2005, I met Cindy. I was completely smitten. Our first date was a 7-mile walk along the riverfront, right? It didn't start out to be, it did not start out to be that. It's
like quarter of a marathon here. So
just go a cute little walk along the waterfront. That was like, oh, we'll just go, I don't know, half a mile. We'll look at the river. We'll get to talking. And it turned into a 7-mile. I lost my pinky toenail because I had come from church and I was in my church clothes and I my church shoes. I ended up losing my pinky toenail.
That's hilarious.
Like, oh, I'm going to talk to this girl. This girl's cute.
I love that. What we do for love, man.
Yep. I was
okay.
She's pretty awesome. I love my wife. My wife is amazing. So I went through a divorce and I had to add up all my assets, and $56 million in December of 2004.
That's crazy, dude.
It was pretty epic. It was a big pile of cash. Facts, assets.
Right.
Yeah. Being asset rich and cash poor is pretty common in the real estate world.
Understood.
Yeah. So, I mean, we had 56 million in assets when I met Cindy. And so she saw a different side of me. She saw me as a business leader. She saw that I had employees at that time, 2005, 6, and 7. We were buying or selling a house a day. Like, it was bonkers how busy we were. Had this giant 16-foot long melamine whiteboard with dozens of houses and hundreds of check marks on a board where we were in the due diligence process, where we were in the construction process, where we were in the who's buying it. I mean, it was just this operation. And so that's who she met. And then 08, 09, I go
Mhm.
from 77 million in assets around like March of 08. I bought this 13-story apartment building, and the goal was to turn that into a condo conversion. And that was what we were doing. And we had bought it in March of 08, financed by Lehman Brothers. We had gone through the process of relocation. We were moving people out. We were windows and doors and roof were all in the process of being redone. And then Lehman Brothers stops writing checks. We were supposed to get $1 million a month for 6 months while we were in this renovation process. And then Lehman Brothers stopped writing checks. And by September, everybody knows what happened. They were defunct. They were broke. They were like, and it happened so fast to have this relatively fast wealth creation over a 9-year period, 77 million. And then one day the market fell. And I mean, within 9 months, I went from almost 80 million in assets to $5 million in debt. That was pretty awful. I mean, that was really, really, really bad.
Right.
Depression, stood at the top of the building a half dozen times, like I was contemplating my own life.
Mm.
And the one thing that kept me alive is my wife. Like I would call her at the top of the building and say, "Hi, I need to talk to you." It was bad. It was really bad.
Okay, so that's intense. What really matters in life, numbers, 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 interest rates, market fluctuation, blah, 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 Lehman Brothers. And I feel like that stuff just goes out the window when these things are what really are driving us. And these relationships are what matter. At the end of the day, it's people, and it's people that move us to do things. You were in a low, and Cindy was your home base here that kept you grounded. What got you out of this hardship?
Like I love hiking. I love the nature. I love the outdoors. We got married in the redwood, right? I mean, I've always loved the outdoors. And on a whim, I decided I wanted to hike the PCT, Pacific Crest Trail, right? So that obsession started probably about 3.5 years ago.
Okay.
The depression was either gonna kill me or it was gonna live. I had gone through like 15 years of hell, really 12 years of really bad, where suicide was a daily thought process. It was rough for me. And the PCT I saw a documentary on people who are walking 2,600 miles between Mexico and Canada. I'm like, yep, I want to do that.
This is like completely off the wall. We got suicide, and then we're like, I think I want to take a hike. Okay.
I mean, we all Forrest Gump, right?
Yeah.
Running
Oh,
for like 3.5 years. Like, I'm going to run, right?
okay. You had your Forrest Gump moment.
My Forrest Gump moment where I just started hiking. And I mean, that was literally the moment where things started shifting for me.
Wow.
Right? You talk about the why. The why was, why am I alive? Why can't I kill myself? And I've come to learn that it's beyond, it stops being a why. And for me, it becomes a who. Right? I am crazy in love with my wife. She makes a lot of things in the world better. And I respect my wife. I look up to my wife. I admire the person she is. And it stopped being more of a why. I couldn't find a why, right? I couldn't find a why to get out of depression. That's just, I think that's the myth. You can't find a why big enough to solve depression. It's a chemical problem in the brain. But I could figure out a who. And that led me to enough action to say, I know it sounds crazy, but I think I want to take a walk. And I want to walk from Mexico to Canada. And I want to take 7 months. And honey, are you okay with that?
What she said.
The supporting girl that she is, she's like, sure, if you think it'll help, we'll do it.
Wow.
And I mean, 3 weeks later, I was on an airplane down to San Diego.
Wow.
That's where it really shifted for me, because desert is surprisingly cold. So it's snowing, it's got 4 inches of snow overnight. And I'm like, if I go into the desert, I will die. And I had to sit there on a log under a tree.
I don't believe this. It's the crazy story, dude. Wow.
I had to make a decision right then and there. Am I going to walk into the desert and probably die? Or am I going to seek mental health treatment that is good for me? That was the catalyst of getting myself out of the depression.
Okay, I'm going to park here a little bit because I know there are a lot of people, myself, top of list, that are not taking action for certain things because there's no life-threatening thing happening here. Life is good. Do I need to do this next thing that would make me better? Or can I just sort of settle into this place? Obviously, your story is of extremes, mental, inner, huge war going on. And you've decided, I'm going to do this thing. My struggle, I am having a hard time getting out of bed early enough that I can start my day at 5 instead of having my son, who is 6 at the time, waking me up at 7 o'clock saying, Daddy, it's 7 o'clock. Can we play together? And I just hated this idea of being this lazy father figure. So the lady I was talking to at the time of the story, she said, your why just isn't big enough yet. And I thought that was rude. I was like, trust me on my side here. She was giving it to me. And that stuck with me. That really did stuck with me. I think that those that aren't pressured into this, life-threatening situation of going to the desert or whatever it is, but they're facing a similar danger. It just doesn't look as bad. It's, I'm going to live a mediocre life, or I'm going to just kind of have this plateau, this okay life. And that 10 years pass, still doing the same thing. What is it that we're facing today as individuals that, yes, it doesn't need to be done, but it should be done because we are meant for more. I don't want to look back and say, wow, I had a great average life. Cool. I want to do stuff, and I want to do it for my son and my wife. All right. So I'm off my little soapbox there. What else?
But I think that's a really important point though, right? I mean, my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, by all definitions, they have lived a really enjoyable, mediocre life, right? There are people, my wife included, who just like that simple, stable, steady Freddy paycheck, right? You and I, we are cut from a different cloth, right? We have to have more. There has to be something bigger to strive for. But I would venture to tell you that 95% of the population, the world population, is very content with being content.
Figuring out people's why is a fun curiosity for me. And it's not even like, hey, how big are your dreams? Are they bigger than mine? It's not like a measure. It's just, what makes you tick? What is it that you're really like working for, living for, dying for? I mean, maybe is a crazy way to think about it. Once we can get that verbalized or pictured with ourselves and with others, there's such a cool level of understanding and connection that can happen. Because people have different whys, right? I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, and there's a calling for me to serve others and love and help. And I am very fulfilled when I'm able to connect with certain people who have a need. And as a dad as well, my son is my number one disciple. He's with me all the time. I'm pouring myself into him daily. You and I talked about, mentorship. Give me some of your thoughts on the fatherhood figure was not there in your life. Cindy came in and was your new why. What are some of your outlooks on life, specifically mentorship, being mentored, and like the why today?
So when we were having the technical difficulties earlier, we were talking about legacy, right? I may not have the children, but I have a burning desire to have a legacy. One thing that impresses me, my father-in-law taught for 55 years. He would work, he would retire. He'd work, he'd retire, he'd work, right? For 55 years, that man taught. My wife has taught for 28 or 29 years. There is a legacy that I see. We'll walk into a grocery store or the movie theater or wherever, and she'll, oh, that's my student, or that student will come up to us and say, oh, Miss Hagan, right? So I look at it as like when you're talking about discipleship and there's a legacy proof that you've done something good in this world. For me, I want to help 1,000 people become homeowners. That's my legacy. That's super, super important to me, especially in light of the 08-09 crisis, where because of my action or inaction or the bank's action, whatever, but because of my involvement, hundreds of people went homeless. So my way to make that right is to help 1,000 people become homeowners. And so when you're talking about legacy, discipleship, mentorship, I look at what's the impact you're going to make on this world? Because every human being is going to make some impact, good or bad. And I want to make sure that there's a through line of proof that I have made the world better because of it. And so I teach, I help other people. I got a 16-year-old that I'm mentoring on real estate. I've got a 19 and a 21 and a 22. I've got half a dozen of the young men, all men, no women, sadly, but all of these kids that are getting into real estate, I'm helping them all. I'm helping the 20-year-old buy his first house.
Yeah.
Right.
Love that.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's how I see it, is that legacy.
John, I would encourage you here, the way you carry yourself, your ability to connect, accept, just break down barriers is so refreshing and helpful for people that are trying to get in, the 16-year-old, these new homeowners. I know you have a heart for teachers. I just want to applaud you because we need to help each other, right? Like we all have different strengths. I love the connecting. I'm a very relational person. I need people who are analysts and technical and schedule keepers. Like I need them to help me. And I know that's something that is a struggle for mine, but you have torn down so many barriers in not just helping yourself, obviously, like kind of come out of this hole and your legacy that you're trying to build. You're looking out. I love that you're turning more into coaching now, because I feel like the script that you're saying and the persona that you're carrying on is helping a lot of different people. So thank you for that.
So when I did the foreclosure bailout work decades ago, I kind of coined this idea of compassionate capitalism. And I think there's a very easy pathway to be compassionate and a capitalist at the same time. That's kind of my North Star. Like, my first question is it kind? Is it the right thing to do? Those are like the first, and then can I make money?
Mm-hmm.
If all three of those things aren't in alignment, then I don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes back to legacy, right? It's like a boat cutting through water. There's always going to be ripple effect. If we could help 1,000 people become homeowners in the next 5 years, that's going to have a 10, a 20, 30, 50,000 people are going to become homeowners because of what we're doing now. It's going to have a ripple effect.
John, we're getting close on time here. I want our audience to know how they can track you. And then what's our one takeaway? If you have something that you could just leave our audience with that you've given us a lot today, but just some ending thoughts on that.
The easy way to get in touch with me, john@condo.fund. Condo.fund is our website.
And I want to say you're very active on LinkedIn. So if anyone's on LinkedIn, he's been killing it over there just with updates.
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm not on any of the other socials. I like LinkedIn. Closing thoughts. It's legacy, and your why tends to ripple up to this idea of who are you investing into? You might not have been invested in as a kid, but you have an opportunity to invest in others as an adult, and you have to take responsibility for that.
That's perfect, John. Everybody, thank you for listening today. John, I really appreciate all that you've given, and thank you for your stories. Wish you and Cindy the best. Take care.
Loved it. That was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Invested Fathers podcast. If you liked this episode, we would love for you to click subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. We appreciate all of your hard work as a father and look forward to our next episode together.